Hello everybody and welcome back to Apple Gaming SE. As always, we'll be starting off by talking about new subs. So I have 44 subs this week. That's an increase of 10%. So I appreciate you all very much. Thank you kindly. Unfortunately, Streamlabs did not tell me who everyone is regarding my subs this week. So I've got a few of you. First off, the user known as Z. Thank you, Z, for subscribing. There's also somebody with, I believe, an Arabic script for his or her name. I ran it through a translator online, and it came out as Mus Muhammad. So if that is correct, thank you, Mus, for subscribing. And I have two more. I don't know who they are, but one of them, I believe, is a user named Taco Bell Addict. So Taco Bell Addict and I talked quite a lot on the Friday stream. I'm assuming you subscribed. I'm going to treat you like you did. If you, either way, whether you did or not, I appreciate you stopping by and talking for a bit. It was good talking with you, and thank you. Getting into the news this week, it's going to be an RCS heavy week. So we're going to start with RCS. We're going to talk about RCS and encryption methods. We're going to talk about bad implementations of messaging programs and the cultural battle of green and blue messages. And then we're going to finish off with an iPhone battery test. So it might be easier to say that this is more of a iMessage and modern messaging standards heavy episode. Perhaps that would be more accurate to say. But we'll start out by saying that Apple has announced that RCS support is coming to the iPhone next year. This is pretty much anywhere and everywhere. 9to5Mac, 9to5Google, Macworld, Apple Insider, Apple Rumors, Android Authority, Android Central. Go find a tech outlet that covers mobile technology, and you will find a story about this somehow, some way. First thing to clear up is that Apple is not implementing like a full RCS stack. What they're doing is implementing a newer technology, a newer standard, I should say, a newer RCS standard called Universal Profile. This was introduced in 2016. It is not the same thing as the RCS that was introduced in 2008. Apple has announced that they are working with Google to create a new end-to-end encryption standard. This comforts me because I don't trust Google's honesty regarding their data mining. We're going to cover that in a minute. That said, I do trust Apple a little bit more, not absolutely, but a little bit more, and I hope Apple will pressure Google into creating a genuine end-to-end encryption standard for RCS. As 9to5Google says, at the moment, Google has its own end-to-end encrypted implementation, with the Messages app on Android that works one-to-one and with group conversations. The latter took just under 2 years to implement. As far as I can tell, the only Google support page that details this is pretty vague on the details, but I will read you a few lines from this article to clear up what exactly they claim is happening and what is supposedly being claimed as happening by the news media. The first thing is that, quote, RCS chats by Google uses TLS, Transport Layer Security, encryption to protect your messages. This means that anyone trying to intercept your messages between you and Google they would only see encrypted, unreadable text, end quote. A couple things to note here. First off, TLS is not end-to-end encrypted. It's got a man in the middle, which is Google and their servers. The encryption keys are created, retained, and managed by Google, not you and not your devices. So when they say something like between you and Google, they mean that your messages are going to Google before they are getting to your contacts. If you wanted a super brief explanation, TLS uses a public-private key pair. What happens is the server creates a private key and a public key. The public key gets distributed to clients, and those clients then have a shared session key where they can encrypt and decrypt each other's transmissions and any data that they're sending back and forth. So Google holds the encryption and decryption keys. So there's no actual end-to-end encryption. So that means You and Alice do not have perfect privacy. Now, I'm not saying that Google will necessarily decrypt and read every single text message that goes to their server. What I am saying is that Google has the option to do so. It may take your encrypted message, pull it into their server, hold it in a queue, and then send it to Alice. And that may be the end of it. There's no proof one way or the other, as somebody who's not inside of Google, who doesn't work for Google, and has no interest in... I'm not a journalist or some kind of investigator in that regard. I'm only going off of what I can see publicly online. The next point that Google makes is that RCS chats that you send using Google's RCS backend are temporarily queued for delivery and deleted after they're delivered. End quote. Note that this is not immediately after they're delivered. So, it's the example I just gave, literally. You send a message to Alice, it doesn't go to Alice, it goes to Google, it waits in a queue, and then it is sent to Alice, right? So Jim messages Alice, Google watches it for a second, holds on to it, makes sure it gets delivered, then once it is delivered, then it deletes it from the queue. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that Google, again, not explicitly saying Google is reading your text messages. However, I can't trust that they're not, since their business model is the collection and organization of information to make it more readily accessible for everybody. We don't know how far that goes into invading privacy, and then we get into, at least in the US context, what private data entails when you are willingly using somebody else's messaging service. So, I'm not gonna belabor that anymore. I don't know that I can explain it another way. Now, I know somebody is going to say in the comments somewhere, or you've seen a similar argument on Twitter perhaps, they're going to say something to the effect of, well, Apple has your encryption keys for iMessage. They can do the same thing. And I want to tell you, no, that's not quite the same thing. You see, Apple offers what they call, quote, advanced data protection, end quote. When you set up your device, your Mac, your iPhone, your iPad, etc., whatever it is, they have an on-device hardware encryption mechanism that they use to create a key. This key, it has a key pair, which is exchanged between you and whomever you were having a conversation with. So why does your message appear on all of your devices, all of your Apple devices? Well, that's because it's a key derived from a hardware token. It's not a hardware token. So all of the devices on your account that use iMessage, they can have that key passed between them. It's not a perfect mechanism. It's not a proper trust zero or zero trust model or a trust no one model. But what that would mean is that each key in a TNO, a trust no one, or a zero trust model, what it means is that each key is exclusive to each device, and each key is also exclusive to each conversation. So Signal does this really well. If you're going between iPhones on Signal, you can't transfer your conversations, or at least last time I did it, you couldn't. On Android, they allow for that, but that's because it's all software tokens. There's no hardware encryption mechanism that occurs. The point is that I'm trying to make here is that Apple is at no point able to use that key to decrypt your messages. Ergo, those messages are end-to-end encrypted. There's some caveats in there. Advanced data protection is not on universally for everyone, but it is the option that you have that Google doesn't give you. Even if you don't use the advanced data protection mechanism, Apple only stores the decryption keys in your iOS and iCloud backups. They themselves do not hold on to those keys to give out to anybody. Hopefully that makes sense to you. If not, there's a question and comment section below. Leave your questions, leave your comments. So, going on, as a case in point to the security of iMessage and how it works, Nothing Chats, so the Nothing phone company, which is they announced Nothing Chats this week. It's a privacy nightmare, according to 9 to 5 Google. This is based off of the Sunbird iMessage app. So this is not directly related to Apple, but again, it's showing how implementing security or trying to half-heartedly do so breaks the entire mechanism. Sunbird is also not an alternative to iMessage, nor is Nothing's implementation of the Sunbird service. Using a Mac server farm to house an iMessage service is old news. When I was at Apple, we were aware of other companies trying to do this. They weren't quite able to, technology has changed, and that was a decade ago. This practice by Sunbird is not new, and nothing getting behind it to help develop this middleman iMessage is not going to accomplish anything remotely close to Apple's features. You simply can't piggyback on the iMessage service that easily. I'll let 9to5 Google explain this. Quote, Wuko on Twitter/X published findings that Nothing Chats sends all media attachments, including user images, to Sentry with links to those attachments visible in plain text. Further, all data is sent and stored through Firebase and is also completely unencrypted. 9to5 Google can independently confirm Wuko's findings. In our Dylan Russell's research, we found that once a user authenticates with the JSON Web Tokens, that's a JWT, that they are insecure in transit, they can access Nothing's Chat's Firebase database and see messages and files from other users in real time and in plain text. He particularly calls out that vCards are accessible, as these directly include user names, phone numbers, email addresses, and sometimes even more personal data. He mentions that over 630,000 media files are currently stored by Sunbird via Firebase, including images, videos, PDFs, audio, and more. So, while it's true that Sunbird doesn't store user data on its own servers, data is very much being stored, end quote. I just want to point out here that they're talking about Nothing Chat's Firebase database. Firebase is a Google Analytics tool. So again, Google does data mining. This is what they're good at. I don't know what else I can say. Just put it that way. There's also another group of sleuthers out there at text.com who publish their findings on how it all works on GitHub. I will include the GitHub link in the description below. Our next story is from Macworld. They're commenting on something a little bit different in regards to all this. Their headline is RCS is coming to iPhone, but the green bubble drama isn't going anywhere. So why does the color of bubbles matter? And don't tell me it's because it creates an unnecessary division in the mobile market. I know there's a lot of Android fans who are like, are all over this, that they're, RCS finally is coming to iPhone. Apple users will finally be able to join the rest of the world in their texting mechanisms and, all the stuff we talked about earlier, right? Rich messages, rich text, rich media, eventually encryption. But I don't know why the blue and green bubbles matter to people so much that are in the Android side of this conversation. One of Samsung's marketing mottos, and less so a motto used a couple times by Google, is, quote, different together, end quote. So is this only applicable to Android users? Like, to me, this sentence is the heart of the matter. Quote, it makes sense for Apple to visually denote the difference between iMessage and SMS. You should know immediately whether your messages are end-to-end encrypted or are open for anyone to view, such as likely being stored by your carrier, right? End quote. So messages scraping is widely used by Google, Samsung, and other Android vendors and your cellular carriers. This is why I'm kind of harping on the encryption technology. iMessage is not used by the carriers. It is just transported across their network. But it's not a technology that is implemented and maintained by carriers and Google or any other hardware vendor, right? So iMessage is exclusively an Apple technology. And we've covered it already, so I won't belabor it. But just so you know, it's not blue and green bubbles. It's really not an important thing. At least it's not important to Apple users. Like, there's going to be some out there who are like, oh, that person's got a green bubble, so they're not using an iPhone. You can pretty much guarantee they're going to be using an Android phone, right? I mean, sure, but I don't think it matters to most iPhone users. That's the thing. Like, I just don't think it matters on the Apple side of things. It's the Android users who are offended by this green and blue bubble messaging app. But I mean, there's tons of messages on Android devices where you can go and you can change the conversation colors. I mean, just normal SMS messengers. But I mean, an annoying thing about it is that it's about, for me, it's about the encryption of it. It's about the privacy of knowing if I send you a message, it's encrypted on my device and decrypted on your device. That's what's comforting to me. And if I know if it's a blue bubble, then I know that it's Apple verifying that. That they're saying, hey, this was delivered, and you're sending it to another Apple device, which we know has hardware-based encryption. So that's what's important. It's not the color of the bubbles themselves. I don't know why this bothers Android users so much. I really, really don't. I mean, don't get me wrong. I am glad, finally, we'll be able to send and receive high-quality pictures and videos and audio between these two different platforms. And this has been a long time coming. This is not something that should have taken this long to implement. Again, this is a distinctly US problem. As I understand it, this is not really an issue for people in Europe and Asia, because they'll use WhatsApp or Viber or Signal or something else, right? Anyway. All right, we're going to finish up this week talking about a video from Phone Buff. So Phone Buff has done an iPhone 15 versus 15 Pro versus 15 Plus versus 15 Pro Max battery test. So after all of the bug fixes and heating issues that have been addressed, I don't think I anticipated the results of this test. I'm glad all of these bugs have been fixed, but now it kind of gives us what we can really expect. I think what was most surprising is that the iPhone 15 Plus outlasted the iPhone 15 Pro. In fact, what I'm really surprised by is how poorly the 15 Pro did. The battery's usage seemed very inconsistent in the test, sometimes lasting shorter than the other models on individual tests. Ultimately, it still beats out the standard iPhone 15, but not by much. So, if I'm going to upgrade to the 15, which I probably should, my iPhone XR is really long in the tooth at this point, I should probably really weigh my options between the 15 and the 15, or the 15 Pro and the 15 Plus. So, anyway, that's it for the news this week. These are my opinions. I hope you've enjoyed them. Comments, questions down below. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Take care now. Bye-bye.